Welcome back to the Winner Circle, everybody. I am here today with Stephen from BreachRx. They are the latest Fortress Cybersecurity Award winner, and they have invented a completely entire new platform and kind of industry or sub-industry in cybersecurity. And Stephen's going to walk us all the way through it. Stephen, welcome to the Winner Circle, and congratulations on the award.
Thank you, Russ. Appreciate it. Look, the award's meaningful because cybersecurity recognition often goes to like the loudest breach or the biggest vendor. Uh, this one is about the work, the sustained, unglamorous discipline of protecting things that matter. And I'd rather win an award for what we built rather than what happened to us. So thank you. I do
Yeah,
appreciate
and it's about results. All of our programs are about performance and results, and that's what we always tell people is focus on, quantifiable results. You guys had plenty of them. You're in this new, you've kind of invented this new space because, well, I'll let you tell us about it. Tell us a little bit, give us that elevator pitch on BreachRx and kind of what the platform is.
Yeah, happy to. Look, most organizations, when an incident hits, they have excellent tools for containing it. What they don't have is a governance layer, something that manages the legal exposure, regulatory deadlines, communications, obligations, and accountability trail simultaneously. BreachRx is built for that moment. So when a technical event transitions into an enterprise crisis and you need more than a binder and a conference call, right? That's where we come in, right? So the platform creates a governed, auditable, legally defensible response, process in real time. Uh, that's a category that didn't really have a name 2 years ago. Gartner now calls it Cyber Incident Response Management, or CERM for short. And BreachRx is one of the reasons, and that's why BreachRx exists.
Now, you were new to the company. Um, And you're new to the kind of this role. You're in this CISO role, but you were on the kind of on the customer side before. You've been at Western Union, you've been at a bunch of banks, Johnson Controls, FanDuel, some fun work at Napster. What was it about this platform that made you switch sides?
Yeah. So when I was looking at what becomes part of it, I think a lot of CISOs, but I can definitely speak for myself, has a certain toolkit, right? Not necessarily a specific vendor, but what are the things I think are necessary to do the job as effectively and as efficiently as possible? Uh, you know, BreachRx came through my attention through Hitch Partners. They had a security dinner that Mike Piacente and company call Sanctuary Dinners. And I met the BreachRx team and we had a conversation. I was like, this sounds interesting. Let me have another conversation with these folks, outside of this dinner and see what's there. And once I saw what they were talking about, I was like, this is it. This is, when you've dealt with enough incidents, because I've definitely had my share, right? And to be clear, right, each organization defines incidents differently. And not every incident obviously leads into a breach, but the way that this was managed, it was a process. And I very much believe in systems and order, right? And so, and you'll see BreachRx talk about that chaos in an incident. That's what I wanted to manage, right? Because we can manage that, right? And we have that tagline, right? Incidents are inevitable, the chaos is not. That's what really got me talking to the BreachRx folks. This is a full circle moment because I've not been on this side of the fence before, but I very much believe in what Andy Lunsford and the team was doing here. Uh, so it is very much my privilege to be here because I can now share. And I was already talking to the folks in my inner circle about this well before this was ever an opportunity for me. So that's what got me here.
Yeah, no, well, you bring a very unique perspective to their organization, right? You were on the customer side, so you know what those organizations are going through. From just a kind of a high level, walk me through what the incident response actually looked like at one of your prior organizations when a serious event hit. Not in theory, but in the reality. What did the first 4 hours look like?
Yeah, so one of the things I've always, you know, told the teams, we have to get our incident response right immediately, right? Because that preparation is very important, right? What we're logging, who's going to get contacted, right? That's all important stuff because you don't get to log after the fact, right? So you want to make sure you're prepared. Now, what I have noticed over time is that as well prepared as you can be in terms of like, hey, we got a policy and we got all this stuff. When an incident actually happens, one of the most important parts of that incident response plan, in my opinion, has always been the lessons learned. What did we learn after this one, right? And so enough of the incidents that I've dealt with have been more about misconfigurations from the inside than it has been like an external attacker. Uh, but like, it was just scratching at me. I'm like, there's something more efficient that we could be doing here. Like, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. Right. And so, you know, we need something more definitive of when does legal get called in and when do we do this and who gets pulled in. Right. And even things like keeping track of like the call list, right? Like that's still a manual process. And there were definitely ways to automate it. But after every lessons learned, I just kept asking myself, there are ways that we can get more efficient at this. And I feel like I'm missing it. Right. And so, uh, chaos is definitely the right word because no matter how well prepared we were, things would happen and there's human nature. It's like, how bad is this? And then you got the board, then you got XCOM, like, are we going to survive this? Or, and that also taught me the importance of resilience. And so you'll hear me use terms like resilience and guardrails a lot, right? It's part of like kind of my brand at this point because the security industry has been saying for a long time, it's not if, but when. Well, the leadership has kind of accepted that now. And they're like, okay, you guys kept telling us when. So when this happens, what are we going to do? And I think CISOs have needed to move to that language of resilience. And, I basically explained to the board this way, right? Like, if you take the analogy of a car and we're expecting to be in an accident, my role is to make sure you can walk away from that accident and keep doing whatever it is you have to do. And that's what an incident really is. At the end of the day, there's this trust element behind it. And I think that's what kept gnawing at me is when we dealt with incidents, what was the trust looking like on the other side of that? Did we show that, we were enhancing trust or was the trust that we were protecting being deteriorated? That's where I really fell out on like what we were doing with incidents as my main takeaway. So if my sense after it was like, I under my leadership, we've degraded trust. I felt like I didn't do my job.
Yeah. Well, in the marketing and public relations world where I come out of, we have similar kind of playbooks or response plans for, emergency news coming out, bad news coming out. And there was a playbook. And I noticed it more times than not, there was, something big would happen in a negative way, a bad customer announcement or, stock price doing something weird or, you know, executive misbehavior, whatever it was. There was this, playbook that we had that would say, you'd go through those steps. And more often than not, step two and a half, you were onto a different plan because of something that, fouled up the plan or fouled up you and took you off course. And I'm sure that most organizations believe they have a cyber incident response plan. Why do they fall apart under pressure, kind of like the, PR plans do?
Yeah. And I think most plans, and some of the ones that I've developed included run under the assumption that you're going to be dealing with a single incident. So this is why some of my most recent tabletop exercises inject a second and third incident to see how we manage when something's coming from somewhere else, right? You might get one that came in from a SIM. What happens if one comes in from a customer? What happens if now with AI, some agent, just did what it was programmed to do and someone wasn't expecting it? So that is what's going to really help you see how well your plan behaves, right? So that playbook, if it's not designed to handle multiple inputs, while you're in flight, I think that's where a lot of it, you're going to see a lot of incident plans kind of fall apart. Uh, which is again, this is one of the things that attracted me to BreachRx. I was like, man, these folks really thought this through. And so I'm excited too because I've now the platform allows you to import your own tabletop exercises. So I've got one for inside the company for us to use. And, again, drinking our own champagne, making sure that what we're out there telling people works for us, right? Obviously, the company's done some before, but coming in as a CISO, I have different perspectives about what like a very complex incident could look like. And I'm excited to share that within the company. And also once we're done with it, to share that experience with the folks that we're talking to. Uh, Going through those exercises really lets you see how well your incident response really works.
Yeah. And now, so you've got this new BreachRx tool that's kind of I think they describe it as a coordination layer, right? It's not detection and recovery, it's this coordination layer. What exactly happens between we know have an incident and we're coordinating an organized response?
Yeah, like, we've been calling it internally kind of incident response fabric because for me, it does a better job of encapsulating what we're doing here. Um, one of the more important things that the platform does is that out of band communication, right? So if you get hit with ransomware, all of your communications channels that are inside the company likely, out of commission. So this privileged out of band communication becomes something that's really important that we offer to our customers, because even during something like a ransomware, you can continue to do what you need to do from the incident side. The platform does a really good job of taking in points, saying, hey, here's who's responsible for this, especially if you've done a good job of defining who all these folks are ahead of time or their roles. And it's just the organization of making sure everyone's on the same page. Everyone who needs to know is getting alerted, indications when they need to do something, when they need to act. And just as importantly, folks in legal get pulled in at the right time, not too early, not too late. And for regulatory issues, those can make a difference between how much you get fined, right? Oh, you decided to tell legal 3 weeks after. Yeah, that's not really what we were looking for when we said, you know, the due diligence for your responses. So, uh, and our chief legal officer had said something really interesting that stuck with me. He was like, uh, we help you slow down so you can speed up, right? And if you've got kids and you ever seen like the movie Cars from Disney, like it always that one line where the main character was like learning how to drift. He's like, go left to go right, right? Like so when Cody on our legal team said this to me, like it was the first thing I thought about was Cars. I was like, yeah, that actually makes sense, right? Because if you can actually take a moment to breathe and then say, okay, this is what needs to get done, uh, you have uh, what I would call more effective results when you can take some time doing it right.
It is. It's funny. I've seen that a bunch of times when people are slowing down and other people speed up. There's a lot of advantage to be had there. It's just different mentalities. You mentioned something a second ago that you're communicating effectively across these teams, and I think there's this communication layer in Breach that does that kind of simultaneous communication. You've been on again on that customer side, on the Breach side. Um, and I've been on the marketing side and the communication side of a breach and multiple breaches. And, we're like legal, you know, and customers are already calling, right? Um, why does that break down so bad from kind of the response to the communications channels, whether it be with legal or the comms team or the customers, or usually the IT team will talk to leadership because they know that's who's writing checks, but they seem to leave out the rest of the company when there's not kind of a structured environment for this.
Yeah. Again, that's going to depend on how fleshed out your incident response and the preparation part is. Like, look, I've been to enough organizations, I've been to enough conferences where we all share like what our incident response policies look like and who's supposed to respond. And either you get it right the first time or you don't update it as it goes along. People have exited the company, they're still on a call sheet. Like, especially now in the age of AI where things are going to move a lot faster, you need something like a platform to help navigate this stuff, right? And I think building on kind of what I said earlier, right? I think one of the lessons I've learned the hard way over time that I think is relevant here is that speed, speed and security feel like they're in conflict, but they usually aren't. I think the real conflict here is between the clarity and ambiguity. So, like when organizations move fast and break things, what actually breaks is accountability. Nobody knows who approved what, who owns the outcome, who caused the failure. So I've learned to build the governance structures before you need them, right? So this is why you hear me talking about the preparation part, right? Because in a crisis, you don't have time to design the airplane while you're flying it. So that's where I've seen the issues that impact who's getting the communications, who's getting pulled in when. So when you have a platform that's already thought that out for you, uh, you're less likely to kind of make that kind of mistake.
Yeah, and you came into this with obviously a lot of experience on that customer side, and you've lived with those problems. Where did you see the clearest evidence before joining BreachRx that the platform was actually working? Maybe it was at that lunch or that dinner that you went to. But what changed in the way that organizations are handling results or handling the incidents, I guess?
Yeah. So once I met the folks at the dinner, then we had two other sessions. So like the first one was like, give me the bird's eye view, give me the business stuff. And so having names like Ballistic and Sin Ventures behind them, obviously these are not like small organizations, right? tend to pick winners. So that of course draws some attention. But then actually seeing the platform, and I was, I'm pretty intense when I'm going through a demo and a walkthrough. Uh, and the team did a really great job of pivoting whenever I asked the right questions or the wrong questions, depending on what side you were sitting on. Uh, and everything that I was asking for just got answered quickly. But at the same time, I'm technical enough to see when a platform works and it doesn't. And it's a shame to say in like this day and age when I tell a vendor like, "Hey, you're doing exactly what you advertise," and that's the compliment, right? Because so few don't. Uh, but watching the platform work, even as I was watching, I'm like, "Hey, what's that over there? Click on that," right? Like, and then they walk me through it. And I'm like, "Oh, see, I didn't even think about that when I was doing incidents before." But again, this was really well thought out. And Andy, our CEO, he comes from a legal background. So he already knows that side of the house, right? And then with Matt, our co-founder, the two of these guys work together and, the platform now has like 200 plus like regulations, legislation, you name it, right? Across, a good chunk of the country base, in the world. So there's almost like no regulation that we can't figure out. And if we don't have it, we can have it for you within like a day or two's notice. So I would say that there was nothing missing from the platform, even stuff that I was like not aware of. That's what really brought me, that was bringing me over as a customer. So for sure, being on the inside now, I can speak to it with confidence. And I do think that full circle story does give me some credibility here. Cause like, guys, I was about to purchase this thing myself. And also,
It's like hair club for men. You're not only the president, you're also a customer,
yeah,
right?
not only clients, also, yeah,
Yeah.
right. So I think too, and then there was also creative ways because, the concern too is, look, CISOs get sold to all the time. And of course, if we see something that we like, we almost have never budgeted for it in the year that we're talking to some new vendor. I was fortunate I was able to get creative with how I was looking at it because um, you can use BreachRx's platform for tabletop exercises. Most of us have already had our tabletop exercise budget carved out. So I was able to take from that and say, hey, I've already got that and I haven't done my tabletop for this year. Why don't I use that, those funds to then bring BreachRx in house and do all this other stuff with it that it was able to do. So, and as I'm talking to customers now, because I'm also on the customer facing side, we're having these conversations. Um, my hope is that they see what I saw when I saw the platform and understand that this can really make a massive difference in how you operate with any incident, right?
Well,
So,
it's the gaps that kill a business, right? It's the leaks and the gaps. And I didn't see that. I didn't prepare for that. And having been through Hurricane Sandy in the technology field, a lot of the businesses in that we came out of that with disaster scenarios and redundancy scenarios that almost everybody put into place.
mhm.
And what I liked about what I read from your nomination and from the materials they sent over was that the BreachRx is actually kind of standing behind financially behind their product too with customers. You mentioned earlier, which I didn't know before, learning about BreachRx, is that you do get penalized if you don't react quickly enough. The SEC will fine you, the government will fine you. And it's not insignificant money either, right? So tell us about the warranty that BreachRx has come up with and walk us through kind of how that works.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll add to that too is that we're seeing regulation come out of places like China, where if you're mission critical, you got 30 minutes to respond, right? Like, so, it's compared to what the US has to do sometimes, you're like, wow, okay. So this is what I'm saying is these manual processes can't keep up anymore. But yeah, the warranty is a big deal, right? Because so a lot of CISOs have dealt with this issue, and this is why like Joe Sullivan has been one of the folks who've been talking about the platform. We in the industry know the stories between, about Joe, about Tim Brown. And so we understand the importance of making sure that we're responding the correct way, making sure we're taking regulations the right way. But there is exposure, right? And those two gentlemen have gone through the phase of this is where personal liability comes in. And so you will see a lot of CISOs now talking about, hey, am I covered under directors and officers insurance? And am I covered here? Is there side A differential and conditions? All of that stuff, right? But what we offer with the warranty is, and this one's generally new, right? So there's about a $3 million coverage instrument tied directly to using the platform. So it protects executives from personal liability arising from any incidents managed through the BreachRx platform. And this isn't marketing, right? This is a financial safeguard. The anxiety in the boardrooms right now isn't just will we get breached? It's will I personally be held accountable? The SEC disclosure rules, like you were talking about, personal liability trends, derivative lawsuits, executives are exposed in ways that they just weren't 5 years ago. So the CERM warranty that we're offering addresses that directly. And no other incident response platform has done this. It's the feature that turns a software decision into a trust decision.
Yeah, and it's really telling of the company to stand behind that. I've been in technology for 30 years, and we always stood behind 4 nines or 5 nines or 6 nines or whatever we were going for in terms of network availability and service availability, and the outcomes where you get a credit, right? I've taken down your business for whatever period of time. Could have been a minute, could have been 5 days, but you get a credit,
Yeah.
right there, and that's it. And so you guys are really standing back and going, well, if this fails for some reason, we got your back financially. So that's really differentiated.
We like to think so.
Yeah. Now the company's also leaning heavy into the AI world, right? They've developed this RexAI. It's described as kind of the first Gen AI engine built for this incident response. Walk us through kind of what RexAI does and how it's kind of different than regular general purpose AI.
Yeah, for sure. Look, incident response is one of the worst environments for decision making, right? You're under time pressure, information's incomplete, regulators have deadlines that don't care about your fog of war, and you're coordinating people who don't usually work together. So Rex AI is the first generative AI engine purpose built for that environment. It doesn't just summarize, it guides, right? So it gives responders accurate, real time direction based on specific facts of the incident. That matters because the difference between a well managed incident and a catastrophic one is often whether the right people made the right calls in the first few hours. So that's how I would have summarized Rex AI for you.
Yeah, and I also like that you guys built kind of this executive view. I think they call it mobile command. Tell us about that. It's kind of platform in your pocket.
Yeah. So everything we do, obviously on the desktop, we want to make sure that you can do it on the go because I've personally have been part of incidents where I got contacted while I was boarding a flight. And I'm like, oh man. So, having something like the mobile command at my disposal would have made a massive difference, right? It was just so happened that like, my flight had some good Wi-Fi and I was able to keep up with folks. Had I had mobile command, I think it would have been a much different outcome. We would have been able to handle it a lot quicker. But I think folks that get that unfortunate call at some time in the day where they were busy doing something, I think this is going to be something that they can appreciate. And at the end of the day, mobile is where a lot of folks are working, right? So we talked about that and we said this has to be something that people can do from their phones. It's just pretty much as simple as that, right? We need to make sure that our customers can deal with this wherever they are, however they choose to deal with it, and most of them prefer mobile.
Yeah, I remember starting this business and kind of needing that kind of mobile on the go or CEO on demand, CEO mobile kind of functionality, and kind of it really kind of was it was strategic for me because I could run the business from anywhere and I had to. So it was it's almost mandatory these days, right? That we have these tools in our pocket. I want to read something real quick from your first public statement from BreachRx that I want to ask you a question about.
Yeah.
You said that the organizations that will survive the next wave will be the ones that can compress the time between knowing and doing across every function simultaneously. What does that next wave actually look like? And where does today's model actually kind of fail to handle it?
So I think a big part of the modern change would be around how AI has shifted things, right? So AI has shifted the conversation from can we detect threats faster to do we even know who's acting inside of our systems? So, we're all deploying AI agents, AI generated code, AI assisted decisions. And most organizations, nobody's mapped the authority those systems have been given. And so the security question isn't just, is the AI safe? It's if this AI makes bad decision, who owns it? And right now, that question often gets unanswered. I think in using this platform, especially when you're doing some of these exercises, you'll realize very quickly we didn't assign this to somebody or who owns it, who's making the call. If your process is manual, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to keep up, let alone if you're getting concurrent incidents like we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Now you mentioned something earlier. You said that the definition of incident is kind of can be debated. I think you said it depends on your definition of incident. You guys are actually kind of expanding the definition of incident, and you're not just talking about kind of these major disruptions. You're also talking about these kind of minor ones too. Talk us about why converging the platform actually kind of makes sense now.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this is all related to enterprise risk, and information security, cybersecurity has always been a subset of what your overall enterprise risk is. And even if you put this in the bucket of IT, the wrong IT incident can have very a massive disruption to the business, right? What if you lose Slack? What if you lose email, right? Like, we bottled it under IT, but this is an enterprise platform that we're all using. Uh, Most organizations, like I said, have their own definition of it. I think when you work with the business and say, hey, security is going to say, if we lose something like Slack, that's not just an IT problem, right? That's an enterprise problem, right? If this is our main communications platform real time, we're not just going to call this a security issue, right? So I think as CISOs go forward and become and understand that we are a part of the business, we're a function of the business just like everything else, and we're there to help support the business, how those incidents are defined become more business aligned than they are just like, oh, that's a tech problem.
Right. Yeah, because there's a huge cost when your email goes down. You know, that happened to us. I remember we had a brand new IT member join the team, and his first job was to go decommission some servers in a data closet. And he went in and pulled the power plug on the Exchange server that was running, and it didn't come up for like 3 days again. So
Oof.
yeah, it was a very big, huge disruption
Yeah.
caused internally. You know,
But so this is what I tried to explain to, when I talk about security for leaders who don't come from a technical background, what I explain to them is the role, basically what I do, and I think what people in my industry as CISOs do is this is all about trust management, right? Every customer who gives you their data, every employee who uses your systems, every partner who connects to your network, they're making a bet that you'll treat that access responsibly. The moment that bet feels wrong, you lose them. Security is how you make sure that bet is justified. This is how I explain it to folks. And I think generally when I explain that to them, they get a better sense of what we do.
now you've been on the customer side for a long, long time. Now you've seen kind of the vendor view. If there's one thing you could kind of tell a CEO or board, something they can do in the next 90 days to reduce their organization exposure before the next breach, what would it be?
Yeah. So one of the things I stopped doing a while ago was speaking in technical language to boards. Boards don't need to understand firewall architecture. They need to understand what are we protecting, what could go wrong, what would it cost, and what are we doing about it. My job is to give them enough clarity to exercise real oversight, not to impress them with the complexity, not to reassure them with theater. Confidence comes from clarity, not from telling them everything's going to be fine. So I think that's the message I want to make sure that the boards understand, my peers understand. Uh, it goes a long way when you give the board the confidence, to make these decisions clearly.
Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I've learned a ton. This whole new kind of subdomain of kind of managing responses and coordinating communications, everything makes total sense to me. I'm glad there's something out there like BreachRx. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Russ. Truly appreciate you having me. And it was a great conversation on my end, too.
Yeah, and good luck on the new role.
Thank you.